So Living Soil is a really good one. I highly recommend. Again, we're on our 18th cycle now, and it's only gotten better and better and better. All right, guys. So my name is Steve Cantwell. I'm from Nevada. The founder and CEO of Green Life Productions. We've been up and operating for almost 5 years now. As a in a really unsustainable market, if you look at it that way. We're in the Las Vegas desert, doing some pretty amazing things. Before I get too far into it, I'm not really prepared with anything. I just want to kind of give you guys my story. I have a really cool story, my kind of evolution of how I got into what I got into and how I ended up where I ended up. And I feel like you guys might be able to draw some strength and some inspiration from it, and take it to whatever you're doing to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve. So I started off pretty much like most of you guys. I was introduced to cannabis at a young age. About 15 years old, I was kicked out of high school for fighting and smoking weed. My parents actually were really forgiving about it. A really cool group of parents, set of parents. They actually took me to Las Vegas, where I was introduced to martial arts, and I started training. It was like kind of like a military school approach, I guess, if you will. So I was introduced to martial arts at a young age. I had the fortunate or the ability to impress One Kick Nick, a famous kickboxing coach, and he actually took me under his wing and gave me the opportunity to live in his gym and train and work with some of the greatest martial artists on the planet. It was a really awesome opportunity. And I was able to do it with the help of local sponsors. So as a kid, I found a local sponsor, Ace Hardware. They paid for my way to move to Las Vegas and to train and just become an animal in my own right. So I moved to Vegas, began training, moved back to Prom, started teaching my techniques at the same school that I got kicked out of for fighting. I actually went back and started teaching fighting too. I thought that was always pretty cool to do. It was one of my favorite things. But then towards the end of my fighting career, injuries started catching up. My body started falling apart, couldn't figure out why. Injury after injury, fight after fight, fighting injured. I just basically was broken and just couldn't continue going that direction. So I retired from fighting. I was kind of reintroduced to cannabis as medical marijuana. So it was kind of different. It was a whole different approach to it. Got really excited. I was just 100% dove into it, quit training, retired from fighting, and just basically just read every book I could read, followed everybody I could follow. This is pre-Instagram days, but anybody online who had a YouTube video, I watched it, and I just absorbed as much as I can in a short period of time, and basically living in that gray area, And then I was introduced to permaculture, and I started off with hydroponics and synthetics. I moved to cocoa core. Then I started doing soil with organic bottled nutrients. Then I moved on to more of a super soil style where you're mixing and recycling soils. And then just out of pure laziness, and a friend mentioned it and saying, hey, just don't dump your soil out this round. I heard it's better. And we started kind of going down the no-till wormhole. Was introduced to a guy named Matt Davenport, who was really big into permaculture at the time, and that was my introduction to permaculture. And then I felt like when I was introduced to permaculture, it was like that same feeling I got when I was reintroduced to cannabis as medical marijuana. I was like, okay, this medical marijuana is going to help me, my problems and help me get healthy and help me get, fix a lot of the issues I have. And then I was introduced to permaculture. I felt the same way, like, for the planet. I was like, wow, this is the same thing like weed was for me, but for the planet. Like, this could really fix a lot of the issues that we're having. And I always thought, like, wow, if I could connect these two things, we could really, get this out there. Use cannabis, I guess, as more of a gateway drug to permaculture and sustainable farming and regenerative farming versus, video games and whatever they try to tell you. So that was kind of my goal. I went down that rabbit hole. Every book I could read, every person who wanted to talk to me, I just tried to absorb as much as I can. And then all this Colorado going legal and all these markets coming into play. You hear all these big teams coming together and these big groups forming, and all that stuff was happening in Las Vegas about 5 years ago. And I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated. You hear all these names and all this money getting thrown around. So I kind of went back to my hometown, Pahrump. It's about an hour outside of Las Vegas. Started talking to some people out there. I actually ran into one of the family members of my old sponsor, Ace Hardware. Their Ace Hardware building had actually gone out of business. It had sat vacant for a long time. The front half got rented out to Goodwill. The back lumber yard has been vacant for 10 years. So I originally went to talk to him just about leasing his building, like, hey, I want to grow pot in your old lumber yard. Let's talk about it. And after telling him my goals and what I plan on doing with organics and, you know, this no-till, save the world methodologies, dude drank the Kool-Aid, called me like an hour later on my way back to Vegas, and I was like, hey man, I got some friends, they want to kind of get together, we want to put some money, we want to bring you in equally as an owner, will you join our team? So it's just really cool, like never seen this coming in like in any way, shape, or form, and just kind of the universe, I guess, after kicking my ass, kind of threw me a bone. So it's kind of cool. So we formed this team. They basically did. There's a bunch of local general contractors, just hard-working old dudes that drink beer, don't smoke pot, and they work hard. They're about their word, their handshake, and it was a really cool group of dudes to get introduced to. So we formed GLP. We took this old rusty lumber yard, completely gutted it, renovated it, and turned it into a state-of-the-art facility in like 4 months. It was a pretty amazing feat. The licensing process was extremely challenging. My wife kind of headed that. She had a lot of banking experience, so she pretty much put together our business plan and dealt with a lot of the licensing. And she's kind of cut from a different cloth. She's like a superwoman, but she got us our license, and we actually got approved. One of the first cultivations to open up in the state of Nevada back in, I think it was 2015. Yeah, about 2015. So when we first opened up, it was kind of unheard of, the things that we were kind of bringing to the scene, I guess. I was telling people that I was going to grow with no-till living soil indoors. People would laugh at me. I'll tell them raised beds, they would laugh at me. I'll tell them I was also going to use LEDs, and they'd just walk out of the room like this conversation's over. But I just find it funny now, and the reason I point this out now is because those are like three of the trendiest things you can find on social media is indoor no-till, raised beds, and LEDs, so it just cracks me up. But yeah, so we started off 5 years ago with this new concept of how cannabis should be grown. And in that 5 years, I can't explain how much we've evolved. Like what we thought we were doing 5 years ago and the things that we're doing now is just, it couldn't be further from each other, and all for the better. So with that in mind, I guess I'll kind of go back to my piece of paper. Yeah, so we started off with the first cultivation facility to start off. We had great success just being first to market. That really helped us get out there. But then having a different product, like an organic product, no one was doing no-till 5 years ago. No one was thinking about doing organics at all. So it really did give us our niche to kind of differentiate ourselves in that overwhelmingly flooded market. So it really did kind of help us rise to the top. And we're still, to this day, considered one of the top flowers in the Nevada market. So anyways, so after that, now after 5 years of indoor cultivation, we're going to move on to the next step of our property. We're going to do greenhouses. So we're going to take all that data from our indoor cultivation and apply it to our greenhouses. And that's challenging because in Nevada, the main thing that we have to get around, the main roadblock, other than BS regulations, is microbial testing and testing in general. It's a huge problem because there's no... It's a problem for the labs who do the testing. There's no real criteria to follow for any labs. They're all different, and the microbial levels are kind of a joke in a lot of ways. But the goal, the overall goal, what they're trying to accomplish does make sense. But for us, it's cool being indoors because indoors you're able to control a lot of things, and we're able to do a lot of side-by-side trials and actually see what works and what don't work. So for the last 5 years, we've been able to really figure things out in a really good way, in a really productive way. So now that we're going to our sun-grown greenhouse, that'll be the next phase. It's basically going greenhouse and using the sun. So back to testing regulation, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. I know you guys don't really have mandatory testing and regulations out here. I know in Nevada, in California, Colorado, all the places that are coming online, they're really big on it. So even if you guys aren't doing it out here as mandatory, I still recommend you guys, if you're trying to get into it, even if you just have a home garden at home and you're curious where your levels are, if your techniques are working or causing problems, I would definitely recommend the data on that sheet is very valuable. Don't just look at it as hey, the state told me I have to do this, so I'm going to do it. That the state just made you buy valuable data, so take that data and use it, basically. So with that being said, I kind of just want to touch off on 3 main subjects. So that's pretty much our story of GLP, how we got started, where we're going. So now we're on our, basically 5 years later, we're on our 18th cycle, no-till. So that means basically we harvested 17 times in the same body of soil without having to heavily amend or remix our soil. Now that doesn't mean I've gotten lucky 17 times and didn't find pest and disease, or didn't have failures. No, it just means that we got through them and we learned from them, and we didn't give up on the goal, which was being organic, if you will. So the main thing I really kind of want to say is I want to touch on just being sustainable. Everybody uses the word sustainable. Everybody uses the word regenerative. As an indoor farmer, I'll never be regenerative. Obviously, I use electricity. I use a lot of things that I guess kind of discount that word or disqualify that word. But there are regenerative systems that you guys can put in place in your facility no matter where it is. Now, some of the things I do in Nevada might not even make sense out here, but where I'm at, it makes sense. So like some of the things that we do for regenerative systems is basically just right off the bat, just look to nature. Whenever I'm designing a facility or any type of system, the best thing you can do is look to nature. She's been doing it longer than any of us, and she's seen it all. So look to nature for answers, and that's always going to put you in the right direction, I promise. No matter what problem you run into, I guarantee it. And it's also the beauty of running a living soil system, because if you're running a synthetic system, you run into a problem, who do you go to? You go to the dude behind the counter and you ask him what to buy, and he's going to sell you some shit. But when you model a system after nature and you have a problem, you can go to nature and look for answers. You can go and figure it out for yourself. We walk around it every single day. There's no secrets, So that's one of the beauties of going this way. That's why I'm such an advocate for it. But again, back to being sustainable. So one of the things that we use to be sustainable and use regenerative systems is a living soil. We use no-till concepts indoors, so obviously we're not tilling indoors, but when we say no-till, we mean no mixing or no disturbing the soil. We try to leave the body of soil as undisturbed as possible. Let that structure build within the soil for as long as possible. But anyway, so living soil by itself is a really good regenerative system to incorporate if you're indoors or outdoors. Obviously outdoors, that's a no-brainer, but indoors it works, and it works extremely, extremely well. Now, don't overcomplicate it. You can go out, you can buy 1,000 testing machines, you can hire 50 chemists, you can hire a soil biologist, you can hire this, you can hire that, or you could just simplify it, run basic systems modeled after nature, and let biology do all that stuff. Let biology do all the hard work, and then all you gotta do is just water soil, and let the plant feed the soil feed the plant, so on and so forth. So my recommendation is with living soils is honestly simplify it. If you think you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to think again. And again, anyway, so living soil is a really good one. I highly recommend. Again, we're on our 18th cycle now, and it's only gotten better and better and better. Another sustainable or more regenerative style, I think appropriate technology, I guess you could call it, would be LEDs lighting. Now, if you're indoors, obviously if you're outdoors, it's just whatever for a minute. But if you're indoors, highly consider this, guys. I know 5 years ago this was a joke. Even now you still hear people like, come on, dude, like I don't need no larvae buds, I'm trying to yield. But I assure you, LEDs, they are amazing, and they're safe. Like I was in a facility in Las Vegas. We had double-ended bulbs, nice fancy bulbs, the whole nine. Nothing cheap. Like we were paying $100 a bulb. U-shell bulb blew up. Burnt the whole room down. I didn't post it like Jungle Boys, but it happened. It was real, and it was scary. Like people could have died trying to grow, pot. Like that's not even worth the. That's not even worth it. So just for safety alone, on a commercial scale, I would consider LED lighting. I've never had to worry about my LEDs blowing. They're IP66 rated. I spray them with water to clean them off while they're on. So I mean, it's just really something to consider. Now the upfront cost, yes, is a little more money. Totally, I get it. That shit sucks, but it will pay for itself. Now, one thing where the LED salesman will tell you it'll pay for itself, I don't believe, with AC. I just want to put this one to rest real quick. Yes, they would save you on your AC, but what you save in AC, you're going to spend on dehumidification, because ACs are dehumidifiers. So if you design a room for LEDs, your guys on calc up your low calcs, but you only need 10 tons of AC versus 30. Okay, but then you take that other 20 tons and you replace it with dehumidifiers, because you're going to need them, I promise. All right, so just make sure you guys are aware of that. But yeah, LEDs. And the cool thing is with these LEDs that I've been working with is just light in general, I guess, is spectrums. So a lot of these new LED companies are coming out. They're coming out with new spectrum control, and there's some really cool stuff to play with on this. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I just want to throw this out there so y'all can maybe help me figure this out too. Is certain bugs like certain spectrums. I tried a new LED out that was bluer, I guess, than my old ones. I don't want to trash anybody's company's names. And every thrip in my entire building went to that set of lights. It was a nightmare. I was like, oh, this is a problem. But then I thought, well, maybe I can make this like a trap plant solution. So there's some ways to look at that. I mean, playing with lighting, maybe directing the bugs one way, dealing with it over there, just something to play with. But it is a real thing. I've seen it firsthand. So the LEDs with spectrum control, that's one of my main things I want to consider using the spectrum control. Not to just perp up my buds or anything like that, but I want to use it to, hey, let's make these bugs go away without spraying poison. So something to consider. Another thing, see, we're in the desert, so there's like, you guys don't worry about it. We're driving by puddles all everywhere out here. There's puddles of water and stuff. Like it's mind-boggling. Like, we think it's the coolest thing coming from Vegas. Like, what, they got water right there? Like, no one's got a boat in it? Like, what the like? It's just weird to us. But anyways, yes, for us, water, we're in the desert, so water is a valuable resource. So basically, what we've done is we catch all our water. I take all of my runoff water from my dehus. Now, there is something to be concerned about in this. If you have dehus that are cheap and they have coils that are made of not so quality, not copper, I guess, you might want to filter this a little bit more. But anyways, we take all our water that we catch out of our dehumidification. The only place I'm losing it is our ACs a little bit right now, I'll be honest. So we're at about 70% reclamation, catching all of our dehu water. Now, this is, to me, is... So I'm going to fucking write this down, because this is some fucking gold I'm about to give you guys, okay? Filter it to make sure any contaminants are out, run it through a UV, all right? You have the most perfect, purified, distilled water that is slightly acidic. And I think that is really important going into a living soil system, because that's pretty much what rain is. So I'm basically watering my plants with rainwater. Now, the only reason again, I'm not going to try to get into cash around exchange and all these things that I'm fully not the guy I talked to about, but I do think there is something there with the acidic water coming out of a dehumidifier that's really helped me a lot. Anyways, so just want to point that out. And there's other ways, you guys. I mean, water might not be such a valuable resource to you guys, but there might be something else out here that you guys can tap into that, you know, I'm not aware of, because I'm not growing out here right now. Another one I want to point out is we just do basic recycling programs. Like, everybody recycles just basic paper, plastics, things like that. But we've taken it a step farther. We actually do a jar recycling program. One of the last things I want to picture when I think about my company is I don't want to picture a mountain of trash like with GLP's logo on it. Like, if I close my eyes and see that, I just cringe, dude. Like, it just like hurts my soul. So one of the things that we've done is we've implemented this jar recycling program, and it is people love it, man. What we do is we set up pop-ups at dispensaries, and we promote them on our IG, and then I put someone there, a representative. One of our representatives is actually a UFC fighter, Emily Whitmire. She's awesome. But we'll send a representative at a pop-up, and we'll do a jar return program where patients could bring their GLP jars. We're not trying to take everybody's jars. We are conscious of our brand. But we take back all our GLP jars, and then we give them stuff. We give them shirts, hats, pre-rolls, depending on how many jars they bring back, just as an incentive. And to me, that's important, because as one person, I can't save the world, but if I could plant a seed in everybody's head just to be a little bit more regenerative, like every single person I could plant that seed in, that's just growing a bigger, more intelligent community. So that's kind of how I look at it. But yeah, it works, man. You'd be surprised how many jars we get back. In the future, we're actually burning our logo onto the jars just to speed up the unripping the stickers and things like that. So we're going more. Well, actually, if you guys like been to Mexico, but like when you drink, or Argentina, like when you drink beer in Argentina, you get a beer bottle that's been used like 30 times. That's kind of the approach that we'll be going for eventually. We'll probably have to change them out, but anyway. So we do a jar recycling program. It's really easy. It's affordable. It doesn't cost us any money. It doesn't make us or save us any money, but it doesn't cost us any money to do it at the end of the day. Composting. So I do my own in-house composting. Now this is more than just making good compost. This is using all of our on-site materials that are virtually trash, everyone else would consider trash, and turning them into gold. That way I don't have to go out and buy gold from somebody else, So we collect all of our materials that we don't use. So obviously all of our sugar leaf will get sold. All of our buds will get sold either as flour or as pre-roll. But then you have stalks, you have water leaf, root balls stay in the soil. That breaks down the soil. We don't disturb a root ball. But we take our stems and our leaves and we set up drying racks. So on a part of our property, it's one of my office, really. It's the only place you'll really find me half the time. Is just a cement slab that's walled off that has drying racks and just some dried stored materials that I use for composting. So we dry them all in racks, we store them, and then I make my compost with 60 to 70% of the cannabis I pulled out of my facility. I have to supplement a little bit of wood chips, obviously. I might throw in a little bit of rock dust every once in a while if I'm feeling curious to see what that does. But it's a beautiful closed loop system that makes one of the most important things for your facility in-house. So it just puts you in control, and having your own composting on site is valuable to me too. Just now that I know how to work a microscope and I've been really down that wormhole. It's valuable having a young compost and an old compost. Those are two different piles, and they both have benefits. So I like using early compost early in the flowering cycle. Later in the stage in life, I'll go more to my older piles, and we see which are full of more fungus, and we'll have more disease suppression and things of that nature. Whereas the younger compost and have more protozoa, more immobile, more nutrient cyclers, so you get more of a reaction early on. Anyways, so having your own in-house composting process is valuable in so many ways. I can't even begin to explain all of them. On top of that, we grow a lot of our own inputs. So obviously cover cropping, Kelly and Josh are huge on cover cropping. They spoke about it last night quite a bit. It's huge. There's so many reasons to cover crop. Obviously, the main reason is for your roots to feed sugars to the soil, exudates. But then once you take those cover crops off, you have dynamic accumulators right there at the top of your surface that you can use as a green manure. Or if it's too much for your soil, you can take it off and use it in a compost pile, and just use various things like that. So growing our own inputs is key. We also grow a lot of pollinators indoors. Why? Because we have beneficial bugs that need pollen in between outbreaks. And then we're able to make seeds. We take our own marigold seeds, our own purple flash pepper seeds, clover seeds, all kinds of seeds that we make in-house, which is kind of cool when you know you're planting your own beans, I guess, in a way. So those are just some of the regenerative techniques, and there's a million more. But at the end of the day, just keep it simple and just really just look to nature to say, how does nature do this efficiently? Like, this is, how does nature water plants? When does nature end its system? How does nutrient cycling work in nature? And just take all those things in consideration when you're designing your SOPs or making your recipes or whatever it is you're trying to figure out and do. Just always have that in the back of your head. I have too many things. I look at nature and I always ask 10-year-old Steve Cantwell, because 10-year-old Steve Cantwell wasn't greedy, wasn't arrogant, wasn't anything, so he's pure. So those are the two voices I always ask. I always ask Mother Nature and then 10-year-old Steve Cantwell. So you don't gotta have 10-year-old Steve Cantwell in your head, but you can figure that one out on your own. So next I want to talk a little bit more about IPM, because we run a living soil system indoors. Okay, now that by itself when I talked to chemists 5 years ago, or really even people today, I'm acting like people today are all cool with it, but they're still not. There's still a lot of naysayers out there. But like 5 years ago when I was talking to chemists about it, there was like, no, bro, this ain't gonna work. Like, this is what they're testing for. This is what you're doing. 2 and 2 equal 4. Like, this is not gonna work for you, bro. And there is a way to do it, I promise. One, you gotta be clean. If we're talking microbial testing and stuff, all right. So I'm going indoors right now, guys. So don't try to misuse what I'm saying. But you want to be clean as possible. All right, obviously, that's a no-brainer. One of the easiest things to fail for, and probably the most thing to fail for, is pesticides. So for us, when they opened up 5 years ago, one of the things that helped us actually open first was the state didn't release the pesticide list of allowed pesticides. So there was facilities in Nevada that were actually up and ready to go, but they were waiting for their pesticide list before they can go because they didn't want to have what happened in Colorado and fail, have a recall because of microbutanol is found in all the product. So there was facilities that were 10 times bigger than mine that were probably open 3 months or ready to be open 3 months before me, but they didn't have their list of pesticides to use, and they had to wait. That's one thing I wasn't worried about. I was like, all right, well, we don't even use those. I couldn't even name one of them at the time. So then the only thing I had to worry about was microbial testing. Again, all my chemist friends, everybody was like, dude, we like you. Wait, everything you just said sounds cool, but no. And I just want to point out the ways to do it. So one, the environment. The environment is going to be key. If you can't keep your air above or below 60% humidity, really I keep my rooms at about 45 to 50% humidity on average. At my temperature rate, the VPD levels are really high at there, so I'm getting good VPD. I'm not, which is another thing that a lot of people don't quite understand correctly, in my opinion, is VPD, pressure deficit, pressure vapor deficit. But we run our rooms, we have good control over your environment, good air movement, good temperatures, good humidity, and you really don't have to worry about a lot of the molds and yeasts, the aspergilluses, a lot of those things. And those are the really popular ones. Outside of pesticides, those are probably two of the most popular fails, is mold and yeasts, which can happen inside the grow room and outside the grow room. That's on both sides of the board. Some of the things that they test for, it's kind of clear where the problem occurred. But then like mold and yeast, depending on the levels, if it's super high in mold and yeast, yeah, you probably started in the grow room. If it's just low in mold and yeast but still failed, the odds are you cured it wrong and you probably should have burped your bucket a little bit more. Some things like that. But anyway, so back to IPM. So the first thing is just make sure you have a building that's clean, a building that you can control, a building that has a good workflow. Now, if you have, a 30,000 square foot building and you have 50 employees and you have 3 growers running it, just throwing random numbers out there, and then you have 47 trimmers that have to walk through your grow rooms to get to your trim room, that's not a smart building design, guys. You just put your building at risk by 47 people that could be carrying bugs, disease, and all these things that are now walking through your garden to get to a room that they don't need to walk through your garden in the first place to get to. So just take those into consideration. Like when I was designing my facility, I was real big into permaculture, and they had like the dartboard is kind of how I looked at it. The bullseye being the center, the most trafficked area. Then you have your kitchen, then you have your living room, and that's how permaculture design kind of works. So we designed our facility like that. I have my office is the bullseye, my trim room is like my kitchen, if you will, or the next layer, and then it slowly grows from there. But the high traffic areas are in the center and they're separate from the other areas, so my grow rooms are protected. So that's the first part of the IPM process, is just really making sure that it's a need to be. If you don't need to be in there, you're not. Like you don't need to be walking by this door. You should be over here trimming or in the office doing paperwork or whatever it is that you're doing. Just be aware of that. That's the first step to a good IPM program that I see a lot of people go wrong. You can still use clover even indoors, like I'm saying, as a trap plant. So what we did in this scenario was I culled all the clover out of the facility because that's mainly where we're finding the aphids. Then I had this wild hair in my butt. I'm like, all right, trap plant idea, dude. Let's plant a pot of clover. So I took a 30-gallon pot, threw it on some wheels, planted clover in it, filled it with clover, and then every day we'd walk into the facility, the first place we'd look is that pot. And it's just all the aphids went to that pot. I busted out my favorite gardening tool. Write this down if you're writing. A blowtorch. It is the freaking bazooka of IPM. It's natural. It uses fire. It's not leaving nothing behind. If you lose control of something, it's both gangster in a mafia way and like righteous in a godly way. So I think it's qualified, you know. But we would draw these aphids to this clover pot, and I just bust out my trusty old blowtorch, and I just torch them. The clover 9 out of 10 times would bounce back right away. If it didn't, we just roll another pot in, and I went from fighting 120 light room on my hands and knees trying to kill these little fuckers because I don't spray shit, to basically planting a pot full of clover and just checking the pot of clover, and they eventually went away. Just every day burn them on the clover. They all went there, and they all went to their death peacefully. So just, I mean, just similar to how I was explaining the light spectrum, like just we have, the tools are out there, like you can figure it out. Just direct the fight. Like, I mean, why fight, you know, if to 120 lights if I could, you know, direct them to one 30-gallon pot? Like, same in my room in front, why fight, you know, 80 beds if I could fight, you know, one with a blue spectrum? So it's just something to take into consideration. Trap plants, and there's other ones like cosmos. Thrips love cosmos, so cosmos are a good trap plant because you could also plant them with like other like purple flash pepper, and then that's where you can inoculate your predators. So if you don't want to bust out blowtorch, cool, plant a trap plant, and then that's where you want to inoculate your predators, is in that freaking trap plant now, because that's where half of its food source is going to be. Especially if there's other pollen. Now it has pollen for various stages of its life, not just the adult. So or larva. So trap plants are key. I already explained order of operations. So again, I'm going to just reiterate, just make sure when you go into your facility that you go in an order. So I have 3 rooms. I call it a 3-pack, the way I run my system. I'll talk about more in a further date. But basically, with 3 rooms at 3 various stages, you don't have plants at various stages, you have pests at various stages. That's something to heavily consider, okay? So if you walk into a later room that's had pests, you're now picking up a later pest onto you, one that might be ready to breed. And then you go to another room that's early on, now you're introducing that pest to a room where the environmental conditions are good. Like, hey, go have fun, bro. Like, it's not cold yet. So just be aware of that. Like, how I run my rooms is, well, if there is some type of pest that's broken in, that's the last room, no matter what. But typically, we go to the last rooms. Well, really, it's which rooms if it has anything. But we have an order. If the young room is clean, typically the young rooms are the end, because if we had a problem, they wake up at the beginning. So if I had any problem, like, you won't really see it in flower because the conditions are cold. But then as we go into a new room and then we start to heat the room up, there that problem is. So the first rooms in our system are typically always last. Not because they have a problem, just because they present the potential for that problem to come up out of nowhere, if that makes sense. But then we go, we just have an order. So one room, say it's 1, 2, 3. We go through room 1, 2, 3. Once we go to room 3, room 1 is dead to us. You are not allowed back in room 1, even if there's not a pest present. Like, this is not worth risking. That's a later stage room. You could introduce something to a younger stage, and you're just kicking yourself or shooting yourself in the foot at that point. So just be aware of your order of operations, and it might not be 1, 2, 3. Maybe you have 10 rooms. I don't know what your system is or how your farm's set up, but just make sure that you guys have an order of operations. Don't be that vector that's just bringing pests and disease everywhere. Another thing, quarantine your rooms. Make sure, again, need to be. If you don't need to be there, you're not. Because, like, the way I look at it is, I have a facility. I have a 12,000 square facility that's run by 2 women, grower-wise. They have lots of trimmers, lots of packagers. Some of my management team's right here. But basically, everybody wants to see the flowering plants. I have 30 trimmers that want to go every single day and see my flowering plants, but no, they don't, because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to hoard information. I'm not trying to be a cool guy, or not trying to show you or anything like that. I'm trying to protect the business. Now, I'm not just trying to protect my profit in the business. I got 30 employees that need a paycheck, and if just one employee brings a spider mite in, now I gotta tell 29 employees I gotta lay them off or whatever until we get a harvest again. So it's not so much just like, hey, this is cool and you're not cool enough yet to see it. It's more like, hey, I got 30 people to feed, and you're not worth 30 hungry stomachs. So just take that in consideration as who you let in your space. Don't just be willy-nilly. And then when you do let people in your space, set rules. Hey, if you've been to any other cannabis plants, any others, like for me, it's majorly facilities. If you've been to any other facility, you are not welcome in mine today. If you want to come in, cool. Go home, shower, new clothes. I'll see you tomorrow. That's a rule. I've had that rule with the state. You can ask my dudes. I've had the state, who you do not say no to, show up to my facility after another facility. I told them, sorry guys, I told you this, from day one. If you want to come here, you're welcome anytime, but you got to come here first. And they fucking left. And they came back the next day clean. And the farm that they came from, we happened to have inside information on, because, it's a small little town. They had every problem you could possibly imagine. Like, if I would have walked these officials through my facility without asking that question, I would have had root aphids, spider mites, possibly PM. They had something else too, I can't think off the top of my head.
Everything bad and spray and everything to get rid of.
Yeah, I mean, literally anything you could think of, this place had. So just be aware of that, man. Just don't be letting even state authorities. If a state official comes up and you never warned them, you're going to get a different answer. But if you warn these people ahead of time, hey, if you're going to come here first, come clean, so on. And then when people do show up, still suit them up. No street clothes to the garden, especially indoor. Obviously outdoor, it makes sense, so you can't really control it anyways. But indoors, no way. You'll never see me or anybody wearing street clothes in one of my flowering rooms or in the back. Kelly, she's been in my facility several times. She'll testify to that. We always just dress out. The worst case, we'll put a coverall on. We have the zip-up coveralls. And then what I do is I have like an essential oil by the door. A Dr. Bronner's essential oil mix that I mainly spray people's feet. I'm not trying to give them a shower with it. I just spray their feet. It's a strong essential oils. If they are carrying anything, usually bugs hate that smell and they try to run from it. So I'll lose those bugs right there by the door and not bring them into the garden. That's kind of the idea with that. Just one more little point. You don't got to do it, but I recommend it. Let me check time. Sorry, guys.
I was going to say you're good because we started a little.
Okay, I got one more thing I think is really good that no one is ever thinking of, and it's like literally, it's mainly this guy here I'm talking about, him and my wife. It's like probably more, in my opinion, than half of our success. So everybody focuses on growing the plant. And then you have some people that, I guess there's two sides of this. You have people that focus only on growing the plant. Then you have people that only focus on branding and putting it in a good box. And that sucks. We don't want to be this guy. But we could grow a good pot and put it in a cool box. I'd like to be that guy. But no one ever thinks about the back end. I call it the back end because I'm technically... It's more the front end, I guess, but they call me the back end, I call them the back end, whatever. But it's the front of the house, so it's the paperwork, the sales. Okay, so I have my wife runs the front of the office. She deals with the majority of the employees. I deal with my growers, my maintenance guys, for the most part. She deals with D, here's one of my managers, that runs my trim room, my trim team, my packaging team, the orders and all that stuff, and that's what they do mostly. Now, as CEO, I get to partake in that. I get to have my input. I know how things work, but I'm not there every day dealing with everybody. They do that. But what I'm getting at is a lot of people will focus on growing really good pot, and then when it gets to the end, either the paperwork ain't right, or their trimmers didn't show up, or their packaging team this, or their deliveries got mixed up, and their orders were wrong, and that stuff all has a huge reaction down the line, man. So like just a couple examples, when you're dealing with dispensaries, just for one. So you have in dispensaries, I remember when we first opened up, everybody was trying to appease the rich guys, the owners. Everybody was going to the owners, the millionaires that funded these things, and they were going to all these banquets, these cannabis events where no cannabis was allowed. I went to a few of them, and they would try to appease the bosses. And I went a completely different route. I'm like, nope, who's your bud tender? Who's your purchasing manager? Let's go smoke some weed. And that's where you want to be. Those are the people that you want to be working for, not just, hey, we could be friends, hey, my weed's good, but make their job easy. Okay, so think about this. I never see the owners of these dispensaries, ever. D, how often do you see an owner of a dispensary? They're not around, all right? Now, if we make a mistake, they don't see it. They don't deal with it. At the end of the day, not hating on people who own cannabis companies as one of them, but they don't deal with that stuff. They don't have to see that. They just cash a check at the end of the month. They're not part of it, The people who have to deal with it are the purchasing managers, the bud tenders, make their job easy. So if you show up and you have a delivery and your paperwork's wrong, and then now they got to fix it, or your order's wrong, and then the purchasing manager got to fix it, or this, that, now you're making their job difficult. At the end of the day, they're the ones who buy your weed. Make your back end tight. If you show up and you got your this is one of my favorite people in the world right here, because he shows up, he's got his shit fucking down. Like, yo, you needed 30 boxes of this, boom, here it is. T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and if it's not, I'll have it fixed in 30 seconds. And it's very rarely is it not perfect. And just having that perfect back end of the house from our facility to their facility has been one of the biggest advantages that no one even ever looks at. They think that we're so successful because of no-till and because of being organic. Don't get me wrong. Those things help. They do. But you would be so surprised on how much just having the back of your house in order is going to help, guys. Like, that's what's going to sell pot. And at the end of the day, we all want to be regenerative and we don't want to talk about making money, but there are bills to be paid. In order to be regenerative, you got to be sustainable. And if you want to be sustainable, you got to keep the lights on. You got to keep people paid. Just something to take into consideration is just to make sure that is thought of, that you're putting consideration into that. And it's not always, in my opinion, it's not always the stoner smoker type like myself that does it. Sometimes you might want to find a nighttime smoker who doesn't smoke during the day that could really cross those T's and dot those I's and do it all right. So it's just something to consider. You think it's the coolest thing coming from Vegas? Like, what, they got water right there? Like, no one's got a boat in it? Like, what the heck? Like, it's just weird to us.